Isn't that what God said to Moses?
It's crazy, right?
So what do you think it means?
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of Euphoria Season 3, Episode 7 this week. I'm David Chen, joined by Patrick Klepek as usual. Patrick, we're going to discuss this episode of Euphoria and share our overall thoughts and talk about what happened. First, I wanted to mention I expressed puzzlement last week about the finger in the box that Cassie was sent. People pointed out in the comments that was actually shown in the previous week's episode of Nate getting his finger cut off, and obviously a very silly mistake by me to not make that connection on the podcast. So I just want to say it's very clear that it's Nate's finger. I still think it's a little bit weird the way the show edited it, but I do want to acknowledge that I did make an error there. All that said, Patrick Klepek, what do you think of Euphoria Season 3, Episode 7?
Oh, David, you playing a clip of Coleman Domingo at the beginning is just a cheat code. Just like this show deploys that actor as a cheat code to distract me from all the stuff that is not working in said episodes. Can't say they aren't setting up some stakes for the end of Euphoria. Whether I think those stakes are interesting or the journeys that we've gone along the way to get to those stakes are particularly well earned. I think this is a deeply frustrating episode with a handful of high highs and just many questionable decisions by characters doing things that don't really make a lot of sense for these characters simply to put people in positions for the finale. And it's like, if we have to be this clunky and have the characters betray themselves and their own motivations in order to get there, that is a frustrating place to be for a show like this. So I want to see the end. I'm deeply curious to see where it all ends up because I thought I had a picture of the end game. And now, David, I think like a version of the show where everybody is dead is 100% on the table. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but like it is within the window of possibility. So I don't know where this show ends up, but I suspect it ends up pretty frustrating, pretty disappointing. And I don't regret the time that I've spent watching this season because the production values are through the roof and it's a lot of actors I really enjoy. But the storytelling, its worst impulses this season are on display in many, many ways in this episode alone. And it's an unfortunate place to be. So I'll keep watching, not only because we're covering it, but because it is interesting. It was a big swing and a miss. And I think that streak continues with this episode of Euphoria. How about you?
We talked about this when we were covering The Boys, but there's this kind of, having done this podcast with Patrick for many weeks now, years, there's this kind of sinking feeling you get when you get to kind of the final 2 to 3 episodes of the show and you realize it's not going to turn things around by the end. It's like, no matter what happens in the final episode, this is probably not going to be great. And that is how I feel about this season of Euphoria. This season of Euphoria theoretically was going to explore topics like the sexual exploitation of women, the depiction of women and usage and deployment of the image of women in Hollywood, the drug trade across, into Mexico and how law enforcement approaches those things. What it's like to have friendships that fracture over time as you leave high school and everyone goes off and does their own thing. That's kind of some of the topics that have been introduced since the beginning of the show. And as of 7 out of the 8 episodes, none of those topics has been explored with any kind of particular insight or depth. It's a very, what I would describe as a surface level exploration of these things. Like kind of, have you noticed that a lot of women are going on OnlyFans?
I am growing my following. This brand might sponsor me. It's called monetization.
Have you noticed that sometimes TV shows trade on the legitimacy of or the sexiness of OnlyFans to kind of boost their own numbers, but then some people are really squeamish about it, and we have really deeply ambivalent views towards women in our society. That's about as deep as I think this exploration goes, in my opinion. Other people may get more out of it. Having said that, the genre trappings of the show continue to be pretty strong. I mean, it's still a really good looking show. It's well lit. It's well shot. Sydney Sweeney is really doing her best to maybe get nominated for an award this season. Like she is putting in the most acting out of any character in the show. And so you have to respect that to some degree. But yeah, overall, it's a bunch of sound and fury signifying nothing this season, I think. Who knows? The finale could turn it around. But let's talk about what actually happened this episode. We start this episode with a flashback featuring Coleman Domingo as Ali. We see how he goes on drugs. He hires a hooker played by Natasha Lyonne. And this doesn't go well when he returns home to his partner and kid and needs to explain things. But then we see him turn his life around and become somebody who helps other people. And that's great. We also see that he knows a lot of people that died during COVID due to depression from addiction. And I just have to say that the way the show has handled COVID is actually kind of good. This is like, oh yeah, that was a tremendously isolating time in people's lives, and a lot of people did have horrible impacts to their mental health, and it's really rare to see a show acknowledge that. And anytime Euphoria does a character flashback, it's generally pretty good. It's generally like, okay, you did a good job, and that illustrated more about that character's backstory and motivations in an effective fashion. But Patrick Klepek, what did you think of getting more of Ali's backstory this episode?
Yeah, I mean, he's just like I said, like Coleman Domingo is a cheat code. He's just a really, really wonderful actor. I've really enjoyed his character across Euphoria. He's one of the constants. Like anytime he's on screen, something interesting is happening, and especially for somebody who's only alluded to, I guess part of what was seeing what was about to unfold, like, he has talked about the terrible things that he's done, and we can make insinuations on the terrible things that he has done. Is there value in putting that on display, or is that just, well, we got to find something else for him to do when he doesn't really have a natural way to be in this story anymore? It's probably column A and column B. Like, it's so well acted and so well shot, and really kind of brings a lot of the character full circle in a way that I found very interesting and enlightening. And if it was all just to have that moment to reflect on COVID, which is, I'm with you. I thought that was very poignant by the story, the story, to point out that on one hand, it was the right thing to do to try and mitigate whatever risk we could however messy that might have been, because not doing so was also going to harm people. But you can't pretend like that didn't have different forms of impact on people as a result of those different mitigation factors and strategies. And so acknowledging that in a very real way, that isn't like staying home was woke. Like, it was like, it's a very realistic, sobering look at the consequences of one of the most consequential events that will ever happen to you or I over the course of our lives. And so all that worked really well for me. And I thought they did just enough to justify an excuse to bring him back into the story, if for nothing else than to have a nice origin story, interesting origin story for him, and also for it to be this kind of final moment with Rue before she goes on one last ride.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about that. Right. He tries to discourage her from going. Rue has been tasked by Alamo Brown with infiltrating Lori's hideout and getting the money out and all the stuff out of the safe. Right. And Rue believes that if she does not do this, that her mom will be harmed by it. And so she needs to do it. But Alamo tries to say, hey, don't do this. Like, it's not good. You need to stop doing this and get this out of your life. Rue believes that she has been spoken to by God because of the burning bush. Now, they make the comment, Patrick, that Moses never saw the promised land. Are you familiar with this concept, that Moses never saw the promised land?
Yeah.
Right. So for those who don't know, the idea in the book of Exodus and the other books in the Old Testament is like Moses' job, as tasked by God through speaking to him through the burning bush, was to lead the Israelites out of Egypt and to the promised land. And they wandered around in the desert for 40 years, and Moses never ended up seeing the promise. Like, he died in the desert. I'm simplifying things enormously. If I recall correctly, Patrick, the reason why he did not see the promised land is because at one point they needed water. And God said, hey, go up to this rock. Moses, go up to this rock and speak to the rock and tell the water to come out. And Moses goes up to the rock, and rather than speak to it, he strikes it with his staff. He like puts his staff on it, and then water comes out, and everyone gets the water. And God's like, "Hey, not cool, dude. I told you to speak to the rock." And as a result, I think that was the punishment. If I recall my Sunday school classes correctly, like that's
think
when
you're
God
about
was
right.
like, "Guess what? You're not seeing the promised land, Moses." I'm like, dude, harsh, man. Like the guy like gave up his like decades of his life to lead these people through the desert. You're not going to let him see because he's hit the rock instead of speaking to it. Kind of harsh. Anyway, it is then in the story Moses does perish before he can actually see the promised land. So if we continue the analogy and Rue is Moses, she dead next week, right? I think that is possible.
I think it's reasonable. A question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think Rue is right to believe she has to go through for this for any of it to have been worth it?
Yeah, I mean, like,
I'm with. I was like, she's in the hole, but I do think it is entirely reasonable on her part that, like, her family, her sister, others would be under. I think it's a reasonable conclusion for her to draw that, like, you've seen it this far, you've got to step over the line and see what's on the other side. Worst case scenario is you're dead, but if you die, I don't think your family does. And I think that's the calculation that she's making, and I don't think it's necessarily the wrong one.
I would agree. I think I have a lot of questions about the DEA's involvement. Like, why can't they intervene? Maybe it's just a timing thing where, they want this whole bus to go through before they can take everyone down. And it's like, but she needs to do this thing now, right? And so maybe that's why. But it's hard for me to believe that the DEA wouldn't want to help her not die, in this situation. But whatever. I don't think the show is super interested in the intricate details of the DEA's work in the show. Anyway, so what else ends up happening in the episode? We learn what happened to Alamo Brown's guy. He needs he like had part of his intestine removed. By the way, very bizarre, Patrick Klepek. He's talking to Alamo Brown about like, oh, like the bullet shaved part of my intestine, and I need this bag now for the rest of my life. Literally, in another show that we have discussed on this podcast this week, there is a whole plot about a character's intestine getting nicked in basically the same fashion. Not going to reveal which one, but I'll just say it's weird that I saw these two things within like a 24-hour time span. Okay. Alamo sends him down with Laurie's men and some women to kind of do this job. Meanwhile, we see what happens with Cassie and that show that she was supposed to be on. Brian Grazer, the actual producer of Euphoria and big-time Hollywood producer in reality, said, hey, Sharon Stone, I don't think you should be having Cassie in your show. It's too risque. I don't want to have protests, all this stuff. And so Cassie and Maddie are both fired.
Do you have to hire a real porn person?
It's authentic.
But that's like telling me we have to hire a serial killer to play Hannibal Lecter.
But Maddie has a plan to come back. Even though she lost all her OnlyFans followers when she deleted her page, she goes on a date with Dylan, the LA Knights actor. And after they have sex, he drinks water with Nate's finger in it, while Cassie unlocks his phone and tries to use his Instagram to post a selfie, which she eventually does. So, yeah, I have to say, despite the fact that I don't think the show is that good, it often is a provocation, right? It often is like, I'm going to show you something incredibly gross and upsetting, and I want to see if you react to it. And seeing a guy post-coitus with Sydney Sweeney drink a finger ice water, I have to say, was very disgusting, and it did get a reaction out of me. How about you, Patrick?
Yes, upsetting. The less realistic thing was that she can't get her account back.
Right.
Now, I just briefly searched, yeah. And it does appear to be like many places. If you self-delete a account on OnlyFans, that there's not a button to recover it. But I'm sorry, the show presents her as like gallivanting around with some of the most on-demand celebrities, like in a very highly coveted demographic. If you are telling me there is an engineer that, like, if she came back and said, I would need this account back, it was a mistake, please, that OnlyFans couldn't find a way to do that, okay, I guess I'll just hand wave it for plot. Like, she's not just a random nobody
Sure.
on OnlyFans. Like, she is in, like, by most accounts in this episode, 100,000 subscribers within 24 hours, like putting you in a high percentage of, or low percentage of the audience on there. It's just a little silly. It's just a little silly
Sure, that's
in a
fair.
way that, like, I had to find other ways to explain this.
Sure. But yeah, I don't think the show's trying to say anything with the finger, right? Other than oh, what a hilarious coincidence that he's drinking her husband's finger juice. I did like that when they showed the finger later and it was in the sink, it was like in a more advanced state of decomposition. I was like, somebody's job it was to think about how long that finger had been in that cup and then show how long it had been decomposing. Very funny. It's kind of classic, like Coen Brothers esque hijinks, and I can't say I didn't enjoy it. But anyway, she does get her OnlyFans account back up to over 100,000 subscribers, despite kind of violating this guy's social media. I'm curious. We'll see.
Pretty
whether
bad.
we'll see
Pretty bad. Pretty bad.
pretty badly, pretty badly in a pretty objectionable way. So anyway. The people that Nate owes a debt to bury Nate underground and give Cassie 72 hours before Nate dies of starvation. And so then Cassie's trying to get the money. And then she's eventually threatened. And then she asks Maddie to get the money. And Maddie goes to Alamo Brown and asks for $1 million. He agrees to assist in exchange for a percentage of all Cassie's future earnings. During a desert standoff, Alamo kills Naz the Armenian. Now, the idea is Alamo said, okay, I'll give him $1 million. And then he doesn't give him $1 million. He just shoots him instead, which I don't know. Like, in my opinion, let me just say this, Patrick Klepek. If I was Maddie, I'd be pretty disappointed at this outcome. Okay? Because you're promising me $1 million and then instead you kill the guy. And then there's like, there's going to be collateral damage and consequences from that. Maybe. We don't know if Naz the Armenian is extremely well connected. What did you think of how the whole Maddie, Naz, Alamo Brown thing resolved?
Deeply frustrating. Like, all from Maddie, just like, oh, I'll just like casually mention, like, I don't know, Rue said something about the DEA. Like, no, why would you say that? You're the most calculating person on the show. Like, you have thought through the next 6 things you've said in your head before they come out of your mouth, which is why you sound so confident when you say them. You wouldn't just casual
Nazis and, I don't know, the DEA. I don't know.
Well, like literally that whole chain of information makes no sense. Why would Rue mention it to Lexi? That makes no sense. Why would then Lexi mention it to Maddie? Makes no sense. And then why would Maddie mention it to Alamo Brown? In my opinion, it does not really. Like, maybe you could say she's playing 4D chess, but it's like,
no.
There's a lot more damage, that like unpredictable damage that can be done by revealing that information than by not revealing it. And so
super frustrating, silly. Betrays an otherwise. I mean, obviously the you know, Maddie's in a vulnerable spot. Like, she is exposed, you know, that she actually wants to help her friend. And so I can understand her acting slightly differently or with more hesitation. But that is a uncharacteristic mistake that makes very little sense to me. Alamo, in the midst of like one of the most important moments of like his work at the moment, like decides like, yeah, I'll just get in the car, just like go shoot a guy. In the desert.
Take on this incredibly high risk activity for seemingly very little reward, or reward that he doesn't fully believe in yet.
And everyone's just walking around and trying not to hide that they're just doing menacing things out in public. Like, it's 2026, it's present day. They're just walking up the front door and not. It's just none of. All these things are caught on camera somewhere. I don't. And also, you're right.
I agree. I do not believe that Alamo would do that himself. Like, he would send someone to do that.
He shot him in the middle, feet away from where the protected flowers are. You're telling me there's not a camera around there, like, watching what's happening in this spot? None of that makes a lick of sense to me. So it's a lot of characters acting irrationally, and I just none of that worked for me at all. I mean, Maddie ending up in a place where she was going to like have a group of women that she like sort of managed and controlled and turned that into profit. And now it's flipped around where it seems like she's going to be the one that now like is in perpetuity held next to Alamo for all sorts of different like is a really sad place for that character to end up, and as a result of many poor decisions she's made along the way. But I just again like it's like so many things in the show, moment to moment, like the way that Alamo tips his hat so he can figure out the trajectory of how he's going to shoot the gun. Sick. Extremely cool. But when I think about the logic of anything that led us there, it like completely falls apart in a way that undermines how you feel about how entertaining it might have been as it was unfolding.
Well, what happens is Alamo does shoot the guy and then convinces his henchmen to give up. I guess.
Why does he do that? This guy's the most menacing character in the season, and he's just like, yeah, I don't know, like, yeah, I guess I'll just help. Like, hold on, I'll get in the machinery.
Anyway, they dig up Nate Jacobs, who has died because he's been down there. They thought he would survive for a few days, but a snake wormed its way down there and bit him and killed him. And by the way, apparently he was originally supposed to die of dehydration or suffocation or whatever, but Sam Levinson changed it because he says he was driving around LA and he had this vision of a snake getting in there, and that's what ended up happening. Also, in an interview with Esquire, Sam Levinson had this to say about what fate Nate Jacobs meets. He says, "It was what was exciting about the characters being out of high school. They're in the real world and the consequences are real. There's no safety net. I like this Wild West frontier aspect to it where you can make something of yourself, but you're going to have to live with the consequences," end quote. That's been a theme that he's discussed multiple times during interviews. It's like, guys, they're not in high school anymore. It's like all the little messing around they did, now it has consequences. To which my reaction is, did you see the final episode of Euphoria season 2? Like, freaking Fez got shot in the stomach and Ashtray died in that episode. Multiple people like almost died throughout multiple points during the course of the show. I'm pretty sure the stakes were already pretty freaking high in Euphoria seasons 1 and 2. You know what I mean? So if he's like, oh, but now there's no safety net, it's like, did you feel that Euphoria season 1 and 2 is heavily safety netted, Patrick Klepek? Like, did you feel these characters were like in this cocoon of safety in Euphoria seasons 1 and 2?
No, also, but just like the idea of like, well, they're not in the real world anymore, so also they're getting involved with Armenian gangsters. Like the level of like, I mean, I'm constantly telling you, like, you know, David, like I'm in debt on Kalshi to these Armenian gangsters when I bet on a Australian basketball. It's just not. It doesn't match the trajectory of where the show ended up. It very much feels. I mean, even the way he describes the creative process of coming up with some of the ideas, like, oh, you're just hodgepodging a bunch of different ideas, stapling it onto Euphoria because it's a vehicle to try these ideas out. And that can be fine if what you stable together is entertaining in its own right. But I think it ended up not being entertaining enough on its own, and also in many ways failing almost across the board, like all the characters that people had come to be invested in across the first 2 seasons of the show. Though I will give the show credit. I am not squeamish. Horror films are my favorite thing. But I discovered last year when I had to get an MRI that turns out I'm claustrophobic. Did not know that. Discovered that as part of the MRI process. Not fun. And so I was fast forwarding parts of this sequence because it was actually straight up like triggering like what I would describe as like panic attack adjacent. I was like, I don't need to see this. Like, it's like setting me back into how I felt in that stupid MRI machine. It was like, well, they did a good job of making this seem like one of the worst ways you could die. That's how I felt in the MRI machine. I'm not going to watch this anymore. Let me know when he gets bit by the snake.
I need to just talk a little bit about the ultimate fate of Nate Jacobs, played by Jacob Elordi. Obviously, Nate dies in this episode of the show, and I have to say, you and I have talked about this all season, but I find the show's handling of Nate Jacobs to be quite bizarre. The season 1 and 2 Euphoria Nate Jacobs was kind of had these extremely serious psychosexual issues, felt almost sociopathic, very dark and quite dangerous. That character is virtually gone in season 3. And ideally, when a character in a show dies, you want that death to feel like it connects in some way with that character. Like you want the death to be like, oh, that is where that character was inevitably going to go. Like it was headed towards that way. I could name some examples, but I don't want to spoil any of the great shows in TV history.
Mm-hmm.
I did not think at the end of season 2 that Nate Jacobs' ultimate end was going to be bitten by a snake in the middle of the desert because he owed money to Armenian gangsters.
Wow.
Now, maybe that's just because I'm not creative enough, but that did not feel like the logical endpoint of that character.
No,
in my
you
opinion.
you just don't understand how that comments on the toxic masculinity of that character in Euphoria.
Yeah, no, that's
just think on that long. Maybe put yourself in a coffin and just think on that, David.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, finally, Rue talks her way into Laurie's hideout somehow, but not really very well because I think they are going to kill her. But before they can do that, Faye helps Rue open the safe, and inside they find no money. However, they do find something much more upsetting, which is IDs of people that have vanished from Alamo's club. Faye, who's fed up with everyone lying to her, she realizes she's not going to get the money. She screams to wake up Wayne as the episode comes to a close. And look, even though this season of the show is not very good, I mean, this is an amazing sequence, right? With them going down and then the machine in the background going on, all the sounds and the lighting and them opening and then like Faye becoming more and more agitated. Game recognized game, like just expertly directed sequence. And Sam Levinson, I think Sam Levinson is a much more talented director than he is a writer.
Yes.
And there is some really great direction in this whole season and not very much great writing. Patrick Klepek, any thoughts on any of this stuff with Faye and the final seasons of the episode?
Yeah, I mean, Faye's not wrong. Like, granted, she has fallen in love with a white supremacist, so Faye is, we're making choices.
So you do not, on any level, gotta hand it to her.
Well, but in a bad situation, not exactly a whole lot of. I do feel like it's, in some ways, her making the best of a shit sandwich. Obviously, she was a contributor to making said shit sandwich, but I also don't blame her for being there's a little like one of the decent thread lines of this episode that kind of starts with Jules and then happens between Rue and Lexi, then happens between Rue and Faye. Is people kind of call Rue a little bit like this. You got religion is not a get out of jail free card for everything that you've done. One does not have to be evil to have contributed to like negative consequences for the people in and around your life. And there's one of those annoying parts on purpose of Rue's character is like, I'm just going to sit and read this book. Now, I'm not sure she's actually reading it. It's because every time she's opening it up, she just starts yapping about what it means to her and how this is her path to salvation. But you got to walk that path. And she's yanked a lot of people around on different chains to get to this moment. And it may be in service of trying to do the right thing. But like, I think Faye, Rue, I think a lot of people are going to be on the chopping block in pursuit of doing that good thing. And much of that will be Rue's own making. And so there is some satisfaction in watching a kind of a slew of people kind of call her out on her. The Jules one was maybe the least convincing of these interactions. Also, will we see that character again? For what reason? Can't imagine why. So it's just it's an interesting spot to be in, but it's a great cut to black. Like, it was like, shit. All right. Well, okay. You got me. I do want to see what happens. If the last episode was available, if I had a screener, I would have just hit play.
I do think that it's very possible Rue's going to die. Zendaya is one of the biggest stars in the world right now. And so it would be shocking to kill her and therefore remove any possibility of future season of the show. But based on where this is going, I do think that would be interesting and potentially satisfying is that, hey, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you've atoned and how much of the Bible you've read. Sometimes like the stuff you've done comes back to haunt you. And as you've just indicated, Patrick Klepek, Rue has pissed off a lot of people and done a lot of damage during her time. And I think it would be like an interesting and poetic ending for that character to finally pass away in the finale. Where do you think Rue's ultimate fate is going to lie in Euphoria season 3, Patrick?
I think it makes the most sense that she dies at the end. Hopefully it's in service. It's hard for me to imagine. Well, I don't know. it would seem strange for the show to put such an emphasis with Coleman Domingo. Like the idea that I've watched all these people I've tried to help fail and die. And then he's got this book of the dead of people that, he was present for, even though like he lost them for one reason or another. It does feel a little bit strange to set that up and just have Rue be
not in the book at the end, right?
Either way, I can kind of see it both ways. Like to set that up and then Rue's just another one in a long line of people that he wasn't able to save.
I think that would be a good ending. That would be like a very dark, bleak ending, and in a way that's like, at least I could totally respect that as an ending. You know what I mean?
I would respect that more than her being a hero like this at the end of an episode of Breaking Bad.
Right.
Which I could also imagine, weirdly enough, Breaking Bad, also a show that ends up like dealing with white supremacists and gunfights
in the desert.
End.
What is it about white supremacists in the desert? It's a crutch, Patrick.
I guess so. TV tropes, get on it. Didn't realize this was one of those. So it's like I'm with you. That seems like the more thematically fitting, and also like closes the book on the show as well. Like, hey, like this is the end of this world. But also hard for me to imagine them killing Zendaya. So I can see it going either way. But if I had a bet, if I was on Kalshi, I would bet that I think she's dead at the end. I think that is like the braver stance, and so I hope the show is brave enough to take that chance.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.